I regard this, and I'll say it slowly, as one of the most disgraceful betrayals by government that I've ever encountered. The story is both simple and complicated. I can't tell you how many times I've written to the New South Wales government, not this one, but the governments of Barry O'Farrell, Michael Baird and Gladys Berejiklian. Barry O'Farrell ripped up the licence for a proposed mine at Doyle's Creek in the Hunter Valley. Recommended to O'Farrell that action by this appalling ICAC. The shareholders in the listed New Coal Resources were just ordinary people, like people watching us here tonight. They were left with nothing. The licence was ripped up, so no value in the shares and no compensation. The licence was withdrawn. Letters were written to 3 Liberal premiers. The response was an insult. In fact, I doubt that they were even read. But the then Deputy Secretary of Premier and Cabinet, Karen Smith, actually wrote to investors, but she sent the same letter, word for word, to everybody. Quote, "I've been asked to write to you. In 2014, the decision was made not to compensate investors who may have been affected by the licence cancellation. The decision was not made lightly. I will advise the position remains unchanged." Well, the first part's simple. The Doyle's Creek mining licence was sold to an innocent third party, another Australian mining company, New Coal, totally innocent. New Coal and its shareholders, ordinary people like those who are listening tonight, fathers, husbands, respected community volunteers, like people every day, they bought shares. I might add, they all had expert advice from financial advisors to see that everything was okay. And they forked out $94 million to buy the mining licence, which Barry O'Farrell cancelled without compensation. New Coal estimates that its Australian and US shareholders have, as a result, lost hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, you can witness, for example, the coal export market. This was an exploration licence. So having cancelled the licence of a completely innocent third party, the O'Farrell government refused to pay any compensation to shareholders. Challenged about compensation by a New Coal shareholder on February 10, 2014, Premier Barry O'Farrell, and look, Barry O'Farrell's a good fella, but the problem is they just listen to these bureaucrats and away they go. Barry O'Farrell said, if I had the money, this is about compensation, if I had the money, we would. But if you haven't noticed, state governments like local councils, and indeed the federal government, don't have a lot of spare cash lying around. The mint at Macquarie Street closed a hell of a long time ago, unquote. Now, as if that insulting response wasn't bad enough, the Crown Solicitor's Office wrote to the government that ICAC had exceeded its jurisdiction on New Coal in terms of the advice it gave, and findings of corruption should be declared invalid. They had nothing to do with any of the corrupt processes. They should be declared invalid. Now, these people just legitimately bought the licence. On May 6, 2015, the New South Wales Court of Appeal wrote to lawyers for the affected parties, informing them of a proposal to issue a declaration from the Court of Appeal that ICAC had no jurisdiction to make any findings of guilt against New Coal. The letter was signed by the current Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beasley, who was then President of the Court of Appeal. She wrote on May 6, 2015, and I quote, "The Independent Commission Against Corruption had no jurisdiction to determine that X had engaged, X being a New Coal shareholder, X had engaged in corrupt conduct within the meaning of Section 8, subsection 2 of the ICAC Act." Now, here's the grubby stuff. That's Margaret Beasley ready to do it on that morning. On the very same day that Justice Beasley signed her declaration, the Baird government changed the law retrospectively to prevent the Court of Appeal issuing its proposed declaration. It was called the ICAC Validation Act, validating all ICAC findings that were unlawful because they exceeded ICAC's jurisdiction. It's hard to believe, isn't it? A Liberal government validating all the unlawful decisions of ICAC in its jurisdiction. So, ICAC conduct that was unlawful on the morning of May 6 was rendered lawful by that evening. Shareholders of New Coal and Cascade Coal were just left to swing. They also suffered allegations that were plastered all over the papers. They simply had their exploration licence stolen and cancelled at ICAC's recommendation. And the New South Wales Government's Validation Act meant that these poor coots could not challenge the illegal behaviour of ICAC or the government. Barry O'Farrell said there was no money. But in April 2021, the Deputy Premier of New South Wales, John Barilaro, announced that the New South Wales Government, remember with no money, was buying back the Shenhua mining licence, as I suggested often it should, Chinese interests, you see. So in 2017, the New South Wales Government, with no money for new coal shareholders, paid Shenhua $262 million, and then by 2021 forked out another $200 million to buy the rest of the exploration licence. So here was China waging a trade war against our country, destroying rural businesses and families through the barley, wine and coal mining sectors, and they got almost $500 million of your money to stop doing what they should never have been allowed to do in the first place. Meanwhile, I've run out of ink writing letters to the New South Wales Government about the disgraceful treatment of New Coal and Cascade Coal shareholders, Australian mining interests. The assets of New Coal and Cascade Coal were confiscated simply because ICAC gave incorrect advice to the government. ICAC had told Premier O'Farrell that these outfits were corrupt when in fact they were just Australian battlers. And there were institutional investors, I might add, from the United States, Japan and New Zealand, who most probably didn't even know where the Hunter Valley was. They simply bought a mining licence. The government of New South Wales stole assets from innocent people. No compensation. But they could fork out $500 million to a Chinese outfit